Welcome to Etz Chaim, which means the tree of life. We're a Messianic congregation that understands that Jesus is Yeshua, our Messiah, and He wants us to follow the Torah just as He did. And now, with a weekly Torah reading, Rabbi Mordecai Silver.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
This week we have a double portion. First part is Matot, it means tribes. Numbers 30, verse 2 through 32, 42. Second part is Masei, means journeys of. Numbers 33, 1 through 36, 13. Torah Portion is Jeremiah 2, 4 through 28. And 3, verse 4. And the Apostolic Scripture portion is Romans 1, 18 through 23. The introduction. The first portion, Matot, deals with oaths and vows, establishing their binding nature for all men and for women. The final portion of the book of Numbers of Bamidbar recounts each of the 42 camps of the Israelites. It is a joyous recollection of God's miracles and a sobering reminder of Israel's many rebellions against God and God's servant, Moses. Numbers 35, 29 to 34. And these things shall be for a statute, and rule for you throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. If anyone kills a person, the murderer shall be put to death on the evidence of witnesses. But no person shall be put to death on the testimony of one witness. Moreover, you shall accept no ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of death, but he shall be put to death. And you shall accept no ransom for him who has fled to his city of refuge, that he may return to dwell in the land before the death of the high priest. You shall not pollute the land in which you live, for blood pollutes the land, and no atonement can be made for the land for the blood that is shed in it, except by the blood of the one who shed it. You shall not defile the land in which you live, in the midst of which I dwell, for I, the Lord, dwell in the midst of the people of Israel. So, in this passage of Scripture in particular, it lays out the penalty for murder. And you have to remember that there's a difference between murder and killing. Okay, and the Bible differentiates between that. The one word for killing in the Bible is nacha, and it means to smite. The word for murder is ratzach, and it means murder. So God differentiates between the two. And it means to murder or to slay. So there is no difference in what occurs except for the penalty. And the penalty for murder is death. And there's no reprieve. There is no reprieve from it whatsoever. That is the penalty. That is the short and the sweet of it, or the short and the fast of it. You don't get a trial over and over and over again. If you're caught, you need to have at least more than one witness. God requires at least 2 witnesses, if not 3. But you have to remember that there's a difference between what God considers, or who God considers to be a witness, and who man considers to be a witness. In the courts of man, a witness is somebody who, whether it's for or against, is rehearsed. They'll bring them in, the prosecutor or the defense attorney, and they will work with them to get their testimony down just right. In God's world, you don't do that. Fact is, your witnesses must come in and give an independent testimony of their own, and they should agree on the crime and the person that did it, but they shouldn't be word for word. God doesn't accept that. It's unacceptable to Him to have that. The other thing that also is the same thing is that God wants actual witnesses to the crime. There's no, supposition about it. There's no, you find evidence and, they call it circumstantial evidence, and somebody can be convicted on circumstantial evidence and whatever. That's not acceptable to God. The crime must have been seen. You can't do that. Because today they put so much on DNA and all this other stuff that they do that But they've also found that that can become corrupted. And that there can be problems with that. So, God's way is the only way that's supposed to be. And we need to remember that. In Deuteronomy 17:6 we're told, on the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses, the one who is to die shall be put to death. A person shall not be put to death on the evidence of 1 witness. Doesn't work. 1 witness is not good enough. Because in reality, if you think about it, that 1 witness may testify one way, and then of course the person that's being accused can testify another way. And that can just zero each other out when you come down to it. You need more than that. God requires more, especially when it's murder. Because in God's eyes, murder is not only against the individual, but it's against the nation, and it is against the land. And he makes that very clear, that it is against the land. And we need to remember about that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We are not under God's law today. We are under the law of men. And the law of men all depends on what country you're living in, because every country has their own different laws and how they apply them and what they do. So you may, in our country, follow one law and then go to another country and find out that there's something different about a similar law that's there that they might have on the books, but it's done differently. If you go to France, you're guilty before you're innocent. And they send you to prison. And you just wait until ever the trial comes up. In the United States, it's supposed to be you're innocent until you're proven guilty. Well, we know that doesn't work out too well. With that usually you're guilty until proven innocent. And even if you're proven innocent, you're still guilty. That's the way of man's courts. Man's courts are messed up. They're messed up big time. The society's mixed up. Everything is turned upside down and on its head these days. Nothing is the way that it's supposed to be. I read the Bible and I see one thing, and then I look at what men are doing, and I can't believe that they're doing that, yet saying it's okay to do that. But that's the opposite. That's why God's not in control right now. He's allowing Satan to be in control. And of course Satan wants everything to be upside down. Because I'm sure that he uses that to go to God like he did with Job and go, well, look at what these people are doing. You see that? They're not doing anything that you told them to do. They're making up their own rules as they go along. And I'm sure God says to him, but how much influence have you had on it? But what it comes down to is you can choose to either obey God or you can choose to listen to Satan. That's what it comes down to. There's so many different things that happen out there when you think about it. And, one thing that I disagree with, and I really come up with that, is that our society says that abortion is okay. In most cases, as they do that. Because we don't want to put any roadblocks in the woman's path to being able to live her life the way that we choose, or she chooses. How about the choice not to have children? How about the choice, if you're going to engage in sex before marriage, or even in marriage and you don't want kids, God makes a way for you to be able to protect yourself against doing that. But how about the flip side of that? What about those couples that can have children, that would like to have children? Why can't you have adoption for that? Society wants to take a child that a teenager has and make the teenager raise the child. Is the teenager ready to raise the child? Most people will tell you that it winds up falling usually either on the parents or the grandparents. And usually the grandparents, because they're the ones that are usually retired. So our society is really messed up. And they want to argue about when a child is actually a child, or when a baby becomes a baby, and all of that and everything. How about at the moment of conception? Medically, yeah, of course they're going to have their own way of looking at things and everything, but that's the way it's always been. Man will find a way to get around the rules if they can do it. And we need to get back to what God wants us to do. We need to do that. I mean, in Judaism, if you really think about it, if you've ever read its history, even though capital punishment was permitted, it was very rarely used. Very rarely used. It was enough that the penalty was there to dissuade most people from doing that. They didn't want to do it because they knew that the penalty was the penalty, and that's the way that it was. And you notice in here, of course, it mentions about we're going to come up to it soon, about the cities of refuge and how the cities of refuge work. Because God did give them the protection during that. But He set rules on that and being able to how far you could go with that. That if you fled to a city of refuge, you had to dwell there until the high priest that was in office at the time you committed your crime dies. And that could be however long it was going to take for him to do that. And if you left the city of refuge before the high priest died and you were found out, you would be executed. There was no way to go back. If you left that, then you willingly left that, you broke another rule, and God wouldn't have it. And that was the end of it, and that's the way that it was. In Deuteronomy 19:15 it says, "A single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime or for any wrong in connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of 2 witnesses or of 3 witnesses shall a charge be established." Once again, there's confirmation about what is needed in order to bring a charge against somebody. And that always takes me, when I read things like that, it takes me up to the woman that was caught in the offense of adultery. And the question that I always asked was, what happened to the guy? Where was the guy? Some people say, well, he got out the window before the woman did. Or whatever. Something like that. But nobody knew who the woman was? I mean, who the man was? Come on, And a lot of people want to say a lot of things about what Yeshua wrote in the dirt, that day and everything, and they go to these great lengths to establish all these different things. What if it was simply one of these verses that came out of there saying, where are the other witnesses? Also, where is the man? Because the same penalty is being levied against the man and against the woman. Same penalty. You can't single out one or the other. So where was the guy? But also, was there any actual witness to what happened? Or was it just, one person telling another person, and then they all just got together and decided that they were going to bring charges and whatever? We don't know. But in that sense of it, if you really think about it, God knows what she did. And what did Yeshua do? He just told her, go about your business. Don't sin anymore. In Psalm 106, starting in verse 32. They angered him at the waters of Meribah, and it went ill with Moses on their account. For they made his spirit bitter, and he spoke rashly with his lips. They did not destroy the people, as the Lord commanded them, but they mixed with the nations and learned to do as they did. They served their idols, which became a snare to them. They sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons. They poured out innocent blood, the blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. Thus they became unclean by their acts and played the whore in their deeds. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against his people, and he abhorred his heritage. He gave them into the hands of the nations, so that those who hated them ruled over them. Their enemies oppressed them, and they were brought into subjection under their power. Many times he delivered them, but they were rebellious in their purposes and were brought low through their iniquity. So in the first part, we see, and they angered him at the waters of Meribah, and it went ill with Moses on their account. So Moses was held accountable, according to the psalmist, because of what the people had done, because they made him mad. I don't think it really went that way. Okay? I think the problem is that Moses lost his temper. You know, and it says here, for they made his spirit bitter, and he spoke rashly with his lips. In other words, he lost his temper, he got mad, and he did something that he shouldn't have done. And what that tells us is, be careful, because there's a penalty that goes along with the action. Every action has an accounting. So if it's a good accounting, it's good. If it's a bad accounting, you have a problem. So we need to be careful of the things that we do, the things that we say. We need to be extremely careful. And then it goes on and it talks about, they did not destroy the people as the Lord commanded them. This is after they went into the land. They were commanded by God to wipe out the 7 tribes that lived in the land. They were to eradicate them, men, women, and children. None were to live. None were to survive. They didn't do it. And we see the result of that, because the people of Israel, instead of following the God of Israel, who made a covenant with them, who has delivered them time and time again, they went against him, and they followed the gods of the people that were in the land of Canaan. They gave in to what was going on around them. And they wound up making treaties with the people too. That wasn't what they were supposed to do. But they honored a promise that was made to one of the tribes that deceived them, but they turned them into their woodchoppers and water haulers. They made them into slaves. But that wasn't what God had originally wanted to them, but they felt that the higher point was they made a promise, and they were to keep the promise. I don't know if I would have agreed with that, and I would have done what God would have wanted, but I wasn't there, and maybe someday I'll get to ask Joshua, why the heck did you make that decision? Because you see what happened after that. Moses knew what was going to happen. He told the children of Israel in the book of Deuteronomy that I know what you're going to do after I'm gone. I know you're going to fall away, you're going to turn away. And everything that I have taught you will be for nothing. Because God told them what was going to happen. That there would be times when the people of Israel would rise to the occasion, and times when they would not. And then God would have to hold them accountable for what they did. And they did. They didn't do. They served their idols. They sacrificed their sons and their daughters. They poured out innocent blood. The blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. The land was polluted with blood. There's no way to redeem the land. Ultimately, what would happen is God would exile the people from the land in order to give the land the rest that it needed. Number one, because they weren't allowing the land to have its Sabbath rest the way that it was supposed to every 7 years. But I think again it's because of everything that happened there that polluted the land because of their sin, and God needed to try to get them to understand what it was they had done and why they were being punished. And what always happens, and all of us do it from time to time, when something bad happens to us, instead of trying to figure out what it is that God's trying to tell us, we usually cry out to Him to help. And usually God wants you to open up your eyes and realize what it is He's trying to tell you. And we need to keep that in mind. There's always a reason for something that happens. In Matthew 23, 1 and 2. Then Yeshua said to the crowds and to His disciples, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So do and observe whatever they tell you, but not the works they do. For they preach, but do not practice. So, doesn't it sound like he's contradicting himself here? He says, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat, so do and observe whatever they tell you. But then he says, but not the works they do. For they preach, but do not practice. So in other words, they're teaching the right teaching, but they're not putting it into action themselves. So God is telling, or Yeshua is telling them, you need to do what they're telling you to do, but don't do it the way that they're doing it. Because they're not right in the way that they're doing it. And I think that comes down to the fact of what they've done. And the fact is that they've gone beyond what the actual Torah has commanded to be done. Now, we're not making the point here that is it bad to follow the teachings of the rabbis? Not if it doesn't transgress or go against the actual Torah itself. If you choose to want to do that, that's your choice as long as it doesn't transgress the Torah command. If it transgresses the Torah command, you can't do it. I'm not saying you cannot do it. I'm saying you're not supposed to do it if it transgresses a Torah command. Of course, the rabbis are going to tell you, well, this is the oral Torah. And that when Moses was on Mount Sinai, he received the written Torah, and he also received the oral Torah. And he gave the written Torah to the children of Israel, and he gave the oral Torah to Joshua, who in turn gave it to the elders, who in turn passed it on down to the rabbis, etc., etc., etc. Well, if the oral Torah, or the oral teachings, are supposed to be the details of how you're supposed to follow an actual Torah command, wouldn't you have thought that Moses would have given them both at the same time? Here's the command and here's the way you're supposed to do it? So I kind of doubt that there were two sets of rules that were given on Mount Sinai. And some people would say, well, it didn't take 80 days and 80 nights to get 10 commandments. Moses was up there for both things because between the first set that were given and the second set that were given, something changed. And something changed. What changed is the rebellion of the people the first time out. And that God adjusted what he was given in order to deal with the problem that the people had brought up and that God now needed to deal with. But even more so than that, we're told later on that in everything that needed to be made for the temple or for the first tabernacle, God told Moses how to make it. He told them how to build it. He told them everything that needed to be done. He told them everything down to the last detail of what was to be. Now, do you think that could have taken place in just a couple of days or whatever? I don't think so. And I think there was more than that God explained to him. God explained to him how the commandments were supposed to be done. And I believe that he instructed the children of Israel in the correct way to do it, but that they never wrote that down. They passed things down orally. And as we get into the book of Deuteronomy, and we know by now that near the end of the book of Deuteronomy, when Moses finishes his final address and before he dies, it says that he finished writing the Torah in the book, and then he took that book and he gave it into the care of the Levites. He gave it to them. And then where was the book of the Torah put? Alongside of the Ark of the Covenant. But what was one of the instructions that were given to the priests in regards to the kings of Israel? That the king of Israel, under the observation of the priest, were to make a copy of the book of Torah and keep it for themselves. Why? Because a king needed to rule according to God's word and not according to his own. In Jeremiah 2, 9 through 13. Therefore, I still contend with you, declares the Lord, and with your children's children I will contend. For cross to the coast of Cyprus, and see, or send to Kedar and examine with care. See if there has been such a thing. Has a nation changed its gods, even though they are no gods? But my people have changed their glory for that which does not profit. Be appalled, O heavens, at this. Be shocked, be utterly desolate, declares the Lord. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living water, and hewed out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. So there's many different ways to look at this one as we do, and we're going to take a look at that in a minute. But who is the fountain of living water? Yeshua. Who refers to himself as being the fountain of living water? Yeshua. So we're supposed to be following his example. But obviously they weren't. Did the children of Israel know who their God was? I believe they knew the promise of the Messiah. But they chose not to follow it all the time. They chose to turn their back on it. But there were people in every generation that knew the truth and tried to live according to the truth. And they tried to pass it on down, and we're told that. We're told that there are men and women of faith in the Bible who lived according to the way that God wanted them to live. And that's what we need to do. That's what we need to get back to. And we don't have any alternative if we want things get right again. And we want to see them get right. And the way that we're going, it's not getting right. You know, for me, with this election coming up here in the U.S., I would just as soon have a write-in candidate. Yeshua. Of course, most people wouldn't know who we were writing in. Then we could write in Jesus and they'd probably disallow it and throw it out. But, you know, that's my choice for a candidate because that's the choice that we were supposed to make. That's the choice that Israel was supposed to make. They were never supposed to ask for a king because God was supposed to be king. And until God returns and comes back and sits down on his throne, he has put his son on that throne. And his son's supposed to rule and reign. But do we accept him as king? No, most people delegate into a position less than that. And nobody sees anything being wrong with that. We spend too much time on separation of church and state and not enough time on believing in God and doing what God has wanted us to do. In Psalm 36:9 it says, "For with you is the fountain of light. In your light do we see light." In John 7:38, "Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." So, if you have faith and you profess that you have faith in Messiah, where is he in your life? Is he living in your life? Is he there for others to see? Or have you buried him so deep that nobody knows the difference? Does anybody ever ask you, there's something different about you? And then you have an opportunity to share about it. Most of the time, if you're wearing tzitzit, they'll ask, why are you wearing those? Or some of them are going to say, well, I didn't know any Orthodox Jews lived here in Las Cruces. And there are some, but I don't identify with being an Orthodox Jew anyway. For me, I'm just a Jew because anything else is just a label as it comes down for that. But I believe in God. I believe in his people. I'm part of Israel, no different than anybody else. How I was born is one thing, but where I have chosen to go is another thing. Because I don't take my faith for granted. I make mistakes, and I'll continue to make mistakes. But I know as long as I realize it and I acknowledge them before God, that God will forgive me for it. That I don't have to keep coming back to Yeshua every single time going, forgive me, I lost my salvation and all of this. If you truly believe that you lost your salvation, did you ever really have it in the beginning? unless you have turned your back on him and rejected him or made him less than who he is, you have your salvation. And you should hold on to it as tightly as you can. Because it is a precious gift that God has shared with us. And Romans 1:18-23. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. The bottom line is this: no matter what age we live in, there will always be idols. And it's how you deal with those idols in your life that are going to set the tone for your relationship with God. And you can't justify what you're doing because somebody explains it away when you know that it's wrong. You know, when Sharon and I were first married, one of her sisters made us symbols of our horoscope. You know, our sign on the horoscope. We didn't know any better then. We didn't know anything about that. So when we became aware of it, we kind of looked at one another and said, I don't think we're supposed to have these things. So it was like, well, what are we supposed to do? You know, it was a gift and was all these other things. I said, we're still not supposed to have these things. I didn't do that. So we wound up breaking them up, throwing them in the trash and getting rid of them. We didn't give them to anybody else. Because why would we pass that on? The same thing with when we became aware of the fact that we weren't supposed to be keeping Christmas, and we threw out all our Christmas stuff. And our children got mad at us. They said, well, why didn't you just give it to us? Because you're not supposed to be doing it to begin with. But they got mad. Well, too bad it wasn't yours to begin with. So, you know, the reality is you have to set the example and you have to set the tone, and you need to clean out your own life before you can be an example to somebody else for them to clean out theirs. And you need to set that example so that they'll ask you what they're supposed to do. You know, how are they supposed to do it in their lives? The more you study, the more you begin to understand what God wants from you. The more you begin to understand the walk that God has called you to. And that's a walk that's never ending. And it's a walk that you'll never find yourself completely fulfilling because it was never meant to be completely fulfilled. Not at least in this life. Not until we become perfected. And Messiah returns. And he sets everything right. And everything is put back the way that it was always meant to be. So we need to remember that faith and Torah go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. Somebody can't tell you, well, all you need is faith, and that's all you need to have. It's not enough. They say, well, as long as you have faith in Jesus, you're okay. All right, what is it about him that you follow and that you believe? Well, he's love. He's grace. He's mercy. Okay, well, is that all New Testament based? Well, yeah, he came to bring us a new covenant. No, he did not come to bring us a new covenant. The covenant that he brought is a covenant that originates in the book of Deuteronomy and goes into the book of Ezekiel, and then it winds up in the book of Jeremiah. They skipped Ezekiel, and they definitely skipped Deuteronomy. If they would study their scriptures, they would realize that. And they would know, why would God have come to do away with the covenant that He gave to Israel and even allow another people to think that they could take the place of the people that He chose if they weren't going to fulfill the covenant? When God gives His word, He keeps it.
Amen.
And that's what we need to remember. And I'm going to close with this. Torah man says, nobody raises his own reputation by lowering others.